Good evening, everybody. Oh, good. I wasn't sure if I'm going to need my glasses, but I can read this. I'm Tom Lerner. I'm head of the Modern Contemporary Art Research Initiative at the GCI, the Getty Conservation Institute. And it's my great pleasure to welcome you all here this evening. For those of you who don't know, the GCI works internationally to advance conservation practice in the visual arts. And as part of this mission, one of our major areas of focus at the moment is researching the many and varied and often very complex needs for conserving contemporary art. We do this through scientific research, treatment studies, exploring new methods for documentation, advancing the debate on some of the more philosophical issues, and developing many methods for disseminating this information. Tonight, we'll be using some of these, and I shan't specify which, to explore public art. This evening's panel will be chaired by my colleague Rochelle Rovank, so I don't want to say any more in my introduction, just in case I'm going to be saying exactly what she wants to say, and I can see her crossing things out on her notes as we speak, so I'll just introduce her very briefly and then hand the reins over to her, in fact, to introduce properly our three panelists. Rochelle is an assistant scientist at the GCI, working on the Modern Contemporary Art Research project. She has an MA in Paintings Conservation from La Sorbonne in Paris, and like myself, you'll probably notice a very slight accent in her voice. She joined the GCI in 2006 and is currently well on her way in her PhD studies, exploring the materials and processes of Southern California sculptors from the post-World War II period. But I'd like to introduce Rochelle now, who will introduce our three panelists.
Thank you, Tom. Good evening, everyone. Public art. I'm not really sure what defines public art. Does it mean art that is physically in the public space? And the implication that this has, it's often site-specific, it's often outside. Does it mean art that depends on public funding? Or does it mean more broadly art that serves a public function, that of enhancing our social experience, beautifying our surrounding, and fostering a sense of community? That's a tall order. But I believe that ultimately, at its best, that is what public art does. Public art means that even if you never go to a museum, there can be art in your life. Art for the people, so to speak. However, at its worst, well, let me just say that I used to associate the term public art with the idea of a big, clunky piece of outdoor sculpture. Its sad, neglected state, a blatant testimony to the complete failure of the idealistic social aspirations I mentioned. And of course, this is more about me being completely ignorant. Public art nowadays can be time-based, it can be interactive, it can be ephemeral. It can even be mildly shocking at times, just like your latest piece of Vanguard Museum artwork. It can be beautiful, whimsical, or thought-provoking. In my ignorance, though, I had a point in thinking that of public art as potentially in disarray. Public art is extremely difficult and challenging to conserve. It is challenging because it is multifaceted, because of the diversity of the materials used, and because of the fact that it is often outdoors and subjected to particularly harsh environments. Worse than the environment, perhaps, it is subject to fickle politics, which in turn mean potentially volatile funding. It is in the public space without barriers, there to be used and sometimes abused. Vandalism comes to mind, of course, but even the meaning of abuse is different when it comes to public art. As in dating, some will argue that maybe abuse is better than indifference. And remember, it is art that serves a function. The lifespan of public art depends on the fulfillment of that function. And that is why conservation of public art requires an entirely different set of mind. These are all issues that we're going to discuss tonight. Very fortunately, I won't be the one doing the talking from now on, but we do have a wonderful panel of experts with many years of experience in commissioning, maintaining, conserving, and even sometimes retiring artworks. Let me introduce them to you in alphabetical order, I would say. Susan Gray, let them call. Just come over. Come. You can, first round of applause doesn't hurt, so to give them courage. Susan Gray has over 20 years experience in planning and managing art projects for governments, private developers, educational and non-profit organizations. Currently, she serves as the Senior Cultural Planner for the designated local authority, CRA LA, former Community Redevelopment Agency of the City of Los Angeles, where she oversees private development contributions to public art and cultural revitalization projects. What did you say about my accent? In Los Angeles' most challenged neighborhoods. She's originally from Australia, and she also has a lovely accent, or an accent, where she graduated with a Master's of Art in Visual Arts in studio practice from the Queensland College of Art, Griffith University. Frederike Wantig is right next to Susan, is professor for the conservation of wooden artifacts and modern materials at the University of Applied Science in Cologne. Besides working as a freelance conservator, she has previously worked for a number of museums in Germany. She obtained her degree, her PhD thesis from the Otto Friedrich University of Bamberg in heritage preservation, and her thesis was entitled Synthetic Materials in Art, Research from the Conservation Point of View. Her master's thesis was Technical and Industrial Monuments, Definition, History, and Preservation. And her current focus in research is on the preservation of modern materials in art, design, and architecture. And our final panelist is Rury Yampolsky, the director of the Public Art Program for the Office of Arts and Cultural Affairs of the City of Seattle. She and her staff integrate the ideas and work of artists into the public realm, bringing both permanent and temporary artwork experiences to residents and visitors. With over 20 years in the field, she has managed artworks projects related to large-scale capital construction, such as Seattle City Hall and Reservoir, covering projects, as well as several artist residencies. She also focuses on best practices for public art administration, developing policies, procedures, and contracts, investigating issues of artist rights, and coordinating the program's artwork conservation efforts. She's also a registered architect with a Master of Architecture degree from Columbia University and a Bachelor from Barnard College. Along with her staff, she's on a quest for new and innovative directions in public art. So please join me in welcoming our panel. And the format that we're going to have today is just a discussion, hopefully a very lively discussion, and then we'll take questions from the audience. And also, we are tonight videotaped, so public and panelists behave. And if you didn't get enough, you can always watch it again. Thank you. So here is a quote that Rory, you sent me, and I just thought maybe we'd start by talking a little bit about what's public art, and can you maybe comment on what?
Sure. And what I think of as public art, and I think Susan sort of shares this, we distinguish it from what we call art in public places, which basically covers anything that is in the public realm, whether it is a museum sculpture park or a corporate art on a plaza, or even sort of unsanctioned art. It also includes public art. And the way I define public art is that basically it's art that is funded by public funds, basically government funds. And the reason I say that is because I feel that, I have a strong conviction that it is really the government's place to provide art as a basic service, that everyone should have access to arts as sort of a public service. And in the opening preamble to our Percent for Art ordinance, which is the establishing ordinance, which was established in 1973, the city basically said, the legislation says that the city accepts a responsibility for expanding public experience with visual art. Such art has enabled people in all societies to better understand their communities and individual lives. So essentially that we're given a mandate that we do need to provide art experiences to people, access to art, and then also to sort of engage people in a civic dialogue.
And just to sort of take that a step further, when we're talking about public art, generally we're speaking about public % for art programs that are set into law either through ordinance or some type of policy. The organisation that I represent, which was the Community Redevelopment Agency of the City of Los Angeles, now we're just an acronym, CRALA, but in any regard, we have a formula where 1% of hard and soft construction costs, where we're acting as a financial participant with a developer, are dedicated to some type of permanent physical art improvement on that within that facility. And then as a parallel effort, we as the commissioning agency that are doing streetscape improvements and parks and other types of improvements in the neighbourhoods in which we serve, we also expect 1% of a budget to be dedicated to some type of permanent public art improvement.
Is there something similar in Germany or in Cologne, Frederica?
No. It's quite interesting to listen to this, because we don't really have a definition of public art. Every city is doing his own definition. So as we talked before, in some cities, in Cologne, we have to also take over the cemeteries. So not everything, like you said, which is funded by the public. We also have quite a lot old art, old sculptures, which we have to take care of. But we have a program, like you said, that if you have a public building, 1% is for art, but it's only for installing and creating art, and it's not for maintenance.
Okay.
So,
and that's an issue that you deal with too, right?
That's correct. Our ordinance basically says it is for the commissioning of new art, including art in public works, but it specifically forbids our spending it on maintenance or conservation of artworks.
Which I'm imagining as we...
We have a little bit more flexibility. The developers are stewards of their projects, and they have a number of options per the policy. Generally, most commission public art, but they also have the option to build a cultural facility or give us the money and we can happily spend the money for them. But in any regard, we're looking at permanent physical improvements. Maintenance definitely is not part of the agenda, but we can fund historic rehabilitation of buildings of architectural significance and assist communities with preservation of important statues, community icons, etc., that would generally qualify as public art.
And so, sorry, what we see here, how does this is a very iconic piece that a lot of tourists see in Hollywood, right? How does this relate to this much more modest?
Well, maybe if we go back to the last slide, this one and the one before. Just to explain, this piece is by Erika Rothenberg, and it's in the Hollywood Highland retail complex. So it was one of the first big projects that my agency helped build in Hollywood. It was definitely a catalyst in turning Hollywood around, and the idea was they would create these destination pieces that would be, draw tourists in, help illustrate the history of Hollywood, the glamour, etc. But meanwhile, Hollywood, had its heritage in terms of movie making, etc. It did have its sort of, there was a period where it was suffering economically, and it was a place more to get tattoos and buy drugs, etc., rather than experience glamour as we know it through the movies. So what we decided to do were anchor projects like Hollywood and Highland, and then if we move forward a couple of slides.
Oh, sorry.
And then also to work with the struggling, merchants along Hollywood Boulevard that are selling the trinkets and the tchotchkes and all those sorts of things, and they had a series of security doors that were, to protect people from getting looted at night, which was happening. And so we partnered with the Business Improvement District and some local artists to do these very simple portraits of stars. And so you've got everyone from Marilyn Monroe. This is Orson Welles. So this is low budget, low tech, and it was meant to be a temporary fix while the revitalization effort was going on. But people became quite attached to them, and we have approached the Business Improvement District about redesigning doors and everything. There's a little bit of a battle at the moment about the Business Improvement District wants decorative grills, and Hollywood, Arts Council would prefer to have these preserved. So it's begun an interesting debate.
If I go back, something that I mentioned in introduction that really struck me through my conversations with all of you is that there's a lot nowadays of light-based, time-based
media in public art? Is that a new trend?
Well, I think that there's always an attempt. I think one of the things that I think public art to some extent has a bad name because some people really think that it's not high art. And partly because it has to serve a lot of different functions and it also has to basically be able to, weather being outside. And, but we still do want to engage, the most creative artists that we can. And so we are, trying to look at different kinds of media. And we also do, in addition to integrated artworks and cited artworks, we also do temporary artworks. Mm-hmm. We do, and some of those involve either community engagement. This was a project by Mandy Greer that the artist created a fiber river that she was installed in a park. But in order to do that, and then she actually, there's a dancer behind there, choreographed or worked with a choreographer to wear the artwork and create a dance. But the artwork was actually created by members of the community. This project was related to our water department. And what the artist did was to go into communities, go to various groups, and actually have people help her crochet the artwork. And in doing so, she actually asked them to speak about what water meant. I mean, water is an important resource, making sure that everyone had access to clean water. And so she would go to different groups and engage them in conversation as they created part of the artwork. And so this is a temporary piece. It culminates in several performances. So we do that. We also, in the city, own a number of what we call portable artworks, which are really paintings, photographs, prints, small-scale ceramics and sculptures that are placed in city offices. So all of the employees in the city actually sort of live with art every day when they're at work.
We've seen more or less the trend sort of come almost like a full cycle. Initially, when the agency started working with developers in partnership to commission artworks, it was what is known as plonk art. You'd have a large sculpture outside of a large building by an artist who was largely known internationally, and that was done. And then we sort of moved more towards works where artists were working hand in hand with the architect and landscape architect, with everything being seamlessly integrated into the public space. And then forward into like more light-based, time-based, experiences, which were involving a lot of risk, a lot of invention, and a lot of excitement. But then we also saw some of those works just didn't age terribly well. Either equipment became obsolete, too expensive to maintain, unforeseen circumstances with environmental changes, etc. And now with, the sort of what we'd call like the end of the Great Recession. There is a more conservative approach to the conservation of pieces. So developers, property owners are much more educated about what works and will not work and what line item needs to be in their budget. And so we're seeing folks, with our encouragement, gravitate towards what we call more predictable materials. When we say predictable, we don't mean boring, but materials that we can say will be fade resistant for 15 years, that will perform certain things within X period of time. And it doesn't mean that the artwork isn't going to be interesting or ingenious, it just means that we know how the materials will perform. So we're seeing more stone, Venetian glass, mosaic, glass, just, very solid materials in terms of performance.
Yeah. I think what is quite interesting that I think the experimentation, the curiosity of the artist working in public art has changed, because what you said, that it's more a conservative way. If you look at the first in Germany, the first public artworks with light came up in the 1960s, and today they don't work anymore because the electricity, the electronic parts, they don't work. It's too expensive to renew them. The security has changed, so they're gone. And today they look with the LED techniques. It lasts much longer, so it changes also the public art. Yeah.
So we may see this trend reversing yet again, depending on funding and technology.
Yeah.
And we have a responsibility as a public agency working with public policy, not only towards the general public, but towards the artists as well. Yeah. We want their work to be an important legacy, and for them not to be embarrassed because the work hasn't been maintained or it's not respected or whatever. So whatever we can do to help them in their mission as creative individuals, to give them the tools that they need to advance the art project, that's our role as administrators.
Right, and we also recognize that those artworks may have sort of a different lifespan, and we actually, typically artworks are expected to last at least 30 years, but we actually have a sort of policy in place that allows us to revisit media works in 10 years to see if it's still relevant and you know, whether we can continue to maintain it.
As you see, we're kind of starting to move into questions of maintenance and iteration, and so this is an example that's here in Hollywood of interactive and time-based artwork. Can you say a word about that,
This
Susan?
is a piece by Steve Appleton, and it's a mixed-use development, which means there's a combination of retail and housing at Sunset and Vine, and this is a little courtyard area with a restaurant, and you would pass into what was Borders Bookstore. So the idea was to catch people in this plaza area and give them a moment of contemplation. So the sculptural element is more or less like a handheld mirror in terms of its shape, and at night it functions completely differently because you've got a, we go back to the previous slide, that little eye is a camera that captures your image, and that is relayed to, we can go to the next one, sorry, to the screen. And then there's an inventory of images, it's a portrait gallery, and then the images are relayed wirelessly to a projector, and then also relayed onto this large wall with the sort of what would appear to be polka dots. And so it's really fun, but it's also very difficult. It's like a violin in terms of describing public art. And what we did with the developer, because it was even more complicated by the fact that the original developer left the project midstream, mid-construction, so my predecessor had to work with the new property owner to revisit the artwork because they weren't involved in the commissioning process, the selection of the artwork, etc. So there was a conversation with the assistance also of Mark Pally, who is the art consultant representing the developer, and Steve Appleton, the artist, to sort of look at new placement, etc. And then we, as the governing agencies, worked to set aside a special trust fund on the developer's dime that was going to be in an interest-earning account with a schedule of performance. So we would expect within the first 12 months, there'll be quarterly cleaning. Moving forward into a 5-year time frame, they'll need to buy a new laptop, we'll need to buy a new projector, and then a contingency for unforeseen circumstances. And it's worked relatively well. There have been unforeseen circumstances. For example, the projection unit, even though it was up high and out of harm's way, there was a lot of pollutants in the air that impacted the projector, and we had to build a special custom design case around the outside of it. And it's, the artist is on board to do regular checkups and everything like that, but without that maintenance reserve, this piece would not have succeeded.
And so, sorry, just jumping back and forth, coming back to some more maybe semi-traditional ideas, if I can. I would imagine one of the first causes of deterioration for these pieces is just to be outdoors. Or Rory, do you mind commenting
correct.
on this image?
These are actually, this is a contemporary totem pole. It's the farmer's pole at our Pike Place Market. And one thing that's interesting about totem poles is that we do have in the Northwest a very large Native American population with the Coast Salish tribes. But totem poles are actually not sort of indigenous to our area. The carvings from the Seattle area, the Puget Sound region, are actually slightly different, take a different form. But totem poles we do have a number of them that they're more an Alaskan and British Columbian art form. But we do have a number of them in Seattle, and they are wood. And traditionally, they're actually meant to deteriorate, so and not be replaced. But you can't have totem poles basically falling down in public, with liability issues. And so we do try to conserve them, but we don't try to, unless the artist is living, is a contemporary artist, we don't try to restore them back to their original state. But they are, wood is subject to rot from moisture, and there's certainly a lot of moisture in Seattle. There's a lot of, you'll see that the sort of biological growth, there's a lot of algae, insect infestation. We had another totem pole that was consistently, for some reason, attracted a woodpecker. And we actually had to bring someone in to deal with the poor woodpecker. But and there's also
what
now
happened to
a
the
sort
woodpecker?
Of sense. What's that?
What happened to the woodpecker?
I don't I don't want to know. He doesn't come back anymore, though. But then there's also the aspect of because carvers. There are carvers who are trying to, they mentor younger carvers and to keep up the traditions. But eventually, if a carver passes away, then there are no more artworks by that artist. And so there is an attempt now. There's I think, a sort of division in the Native community about whether you should actually restore the totem poles or let them sort of go into a state of stasis where they don't deteriorate any further. And that's typically what we do. We do also try to involve, if the artist is still living, if the carver is still living, to involve them in the process of restoration and sort of restore it to the point that they feel comfortable.
Definitely looks much better. And so this, maybe another example of really bad influence of the environment. But another cause I think that we were discussing earlier, maybe, Frederick, is neglect, I think.
Neglect and and kind of wrong cleaning. This is water kinetic sculpture or fountain, and the first thing is that you see there is no water anymore. The city of Cologne can't afford the watering of the fountains, so they decided to ask the Cologne inhabitants, if you want to have water in the fountains, you have to pay for it. So you can kind of rent a fountain and then you pay the water for the year. This is the first, and with this fountain, no Cologne inhabitant wanted to pay for the water, and so it looks more like a playground or whatever. You can't really see that's a water kinetic sculpture. And the thing is that if you go further on one, that it's really, people don't understand it anymore as a fountain, as an artwork. It's more like something, it disturbs the place, and it's used for graffiti, for paper bin or whatever you want to use it. And the problem is here also not only that the city of Cologne has no money, it's also the communication, that you have to explain an artwork to the inhabitants, what it is and what for is it installed. It's a big place in the not really downtown of Cologne, it's more on a side, and this place was designed in the 1970s and 80s, so it's really a kind of going back 20 years to see this fountain working in an architecture from the 70s and the 80s, and the place changed over the time, but the fountain and the artwork is still there, and so you won't get it anymore. The place is now really closed, and it was planned by the architecture to be really open. And this is that people don't recognize the artwork as an artwork. Yeah.
And it's terribly sad, but we're in a similar circumstance where we no longer encourage or even allow developers to really do water features because of the cost of maintenance. And then if the piece is neglected, you end up with all sorts of liability issues with rusting elements or bacterial material developing in basins and all sorts of things.
Right, and also with water fountains, you do have to, the water has to be treated, so it's basically potable water. So there are issues of expense with that. And so we too also do not commission water features. We may, if, let's say the Parks Department is building a water feature, we may engage an artist to work with that department, but we will specifically say we will not maintain the water, the plumbing. And we may do exterior parts, but none of the workings of a fountain.
And like many other public art projects, one person's fountain is someone else's bathtub, and so you just need to be very cognizant of what someone else may interpret the artwork to do. I've had people dry their laundry on artwork, cook chickens on artwork. You'd be surprising. But in any regard, our role is to try and, I guess we're paid to be paranoid sometimes, to sort of think about what may happen in terms of maintenance, but also in terms of use.
Yeah, and I think with the fountains, it's also quite interesting that, like you said, you don't care about the plumbing, so you have different administrations working for it. The setting is in the park, so the Department of Gardening and Greening, and then you have a fountain. The water department is coming and taking care, and they don't work together. So at the end, there's no water. The artwork is not working because people don't communicate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is
And clearly, funding is a huge issue. How does this image relate to funding?
Yeah, this is if the city has no money and you have a lot of artworks out there and that you don't take care about the artworks and you don't really maintain it and you can change it, like you have your portable artworks and you said that you have certain artworks which for 10 years or for 30 years. So we have the situation in Cologne that we have artworks in the outside for more than 150 years, and the city of Cologne didn't really take care of it. Mm-hmm. But we have a really lively art scene in Cologne, and there's a group of artists. They call themselves X99, and they decided to have nice artworks in the city. And they come during the night, and they install artworks. And this is called Balanceur, and it's on the bridge, and this is the landing bird, yeah. And we don't know how they installed the artwork there.
You don't want to know. You really don't want to know.
you go on the bridge, and then you see this line over there, and down there is the river, and the river is quite deep. It's about 8 meters, so we don't know if they balanced over the steel to put it there. And quite interesting, this was recognized the next day. And if you go on to the next slide, this is the landing bird, and it was installed in the south part of the city. And this was the first object the group installed. And here they wanted to really to make a note to the city of Cologne, to the mayor. We want to have nice artworks, and we will see how long it will take until you recognize this artwork. And it took about 2 years that the administration was wondering, oh, there's an artwork, did you know who installed it? No, nobody knows about it. Yeah. And after the two years when we started the inventory, we decided to put it on the list and to have it on the list. And we talked to the cultural department. I say, yes, okay, we can do it. Does it cost any money? No, it doesn't. It's there, it's installed. And the artist group is taking care for the maintenance. They don't tell the names because they're afraid of being followed by law. So they take care for the artwork by night, and they want to tell the city, take care of the art and install nice artworks. Yeah.
So just a side question, does the artist or artist collective, do they sign? How did you know their...
Yeah, it is signed, okay. X99. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and we found out the artists, but they don't want to be...
Right.
The names will not be told. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Not even in confidence to me. And so, I mean, from what you've been saying for the past few minutes, it seems it really comes down to a lot of funding issues, and also you're mentioning different government entities not talking to each other. Is that a big part of what you have to deal with in terms of maintaining the artwork?
Well, we try to, through lessons learned, because we've been commissioning artwork since the mid-60s, improve upon our process as we move forward. So now we know to get everything in writing. With developers, we actually record the maintenance agreements with the county. It's an official document that will transfer from one property owner to the other. And there's a full maintenance manual, everything from warranty information, the conservator that may have consulted, the size bolts, the paint code numbers. I mean, everything is fully documented. But with the older projects, there's a lot of detective work that needs to be done and reconnecting the dots, and it might be something as simple as so-and-so from that department thought it was a good idea, and then he retired, and there's no continuity with that relationship. So the water gets turned off, the lights get turned off, no one's paying the bill anymore, and then you have to try and rebuild that connection. So to answer your question, it's something that I think we're more observant of now, but with the older projects which were done in a leap of good faith, it sometimes is nearly impossible to try and rebuild that relationship.
Right. So on the positive note, you would say that things have definitely improved.
Oh, for sure.
There's a lot more know-how and experience.
Right, and one of the things that is critical is, that we do maintain an inventory, and we try to keep an inventory of all the artworks that we, as the Office of Arts and Cultural Affairs, owns and maintains. Other departments do occasionally do their own artworks. The Parks Department will accept their own donations, or they will occasionally commission their own. And we do actually try to keep tabs on what they're doing as well, partly because a lot of times someone will say, oh, this artwork in this park is falling apart, will you take care of it? And we'll say, well, we don't own it. But we actually do have a lot of expertise. We do have a conservator on staff, and so she actually works with the Parks Department and offers a lot of advice. And so we provide technical assistance to other departments. But through the Percent for Art, those are the projects that we commission. We are responsible for performing maintenance and conservation on those artworks.
How long has it been since you've had conservators on staff?
I think for a while we were doing sort of temporary employees, and I think we have had someone permanently for about 8 years.
Okay.
And so it's actually really great to be able to have someone now. In terms of funding, her salary is paid for out of the funds that we do get, and we've been lucky that we have been getting specific funds for allocated specifically for conservation. It's never enough, and we own about 380 permanently sited artworks and about 2,800 portable artworks. And there's always a situation where we do have to do some deferred maintenance. We have to prioritize every year sort of what can we take care of with those funds. Because we also, and we will pay for, again, her salary, we pay for a van that we own, the materials, and supplies that we need, as well as we have specific cases where we might hire a consultant. And so we have some contracting that we do with those funds as well. One of the things, I know you put up the slide, and this is actually from the Olympic Sculpture Park, which is one of the venues of the Seattle Art Museum, which is a nonprofit organization. And this is in front of their Richard Serra piece called Wake. And they're really careful. The Sculpture Park is sort of handled, the art is out in the public, but they do not want people to touch the artwork. And we actually assume that if it's going out in the public realm, someone will touch it. And they may do worse things, but they definitely will touch it. So, and it is one of those things when we're commissioning that we actually have the artists, when they make their proposal for what they want to do, one of the questions we always ask is, what is involved in the maintenance? And then after they've created the artwork, we ask for very detailed maintenance instructions. If they have electronic parts, we want to know the name and model of all the components. And we put that into a database. So it's, again, part of the tracking. And then at least once, or I guess twice a year, our conservator does go out and make the rounds and inspects all the artworks.
So definitely a lot of planning
goes
into that. And then also, there's something funny for some reason about this image. I guess because of what you said, you assume it's going to be touched. It's in the public room. And an extreme form of touching interaction.
This is an artwork that was actually donated to the city in the 70s by sort of an Italian-American fraternal group, and this is Christopher Columbus. And every year around October, I guess it's 12th, and as I said, this is a community that has a lot of Native American, First Nations population. The piece is vandalized with red paint, very viscous red paint. And in the past few years, we've actually tried, sort of as a preventive measure, we will leave him on site, but crate up Columbus. This past year, people actually broke through the crate in order to splash paint on it. But the issues with, beyond sort of, it's not really a statement about the artwork. It's a statement about what the artwork represents. But one of the things that is difficult about this piece is that, this is a really viscous and toxic paint. This artwork is on a pier. And so the removal, the paint going on there, and then also, what it takes to remove the artwork involves certain, chemicals. And it's really difficult when you're working over water, to have to try to restore this piece. And so that's part of the reason why we actually try to create it, is just so that we don't have to have that environmental impact.
But that challenge also exists for, let's say, a piece that was meant to have some type of surface coating, paint, whatever. when you have a piece that's been out for a long period of time, it will need a new type of treatment through the course of time because pigments fade, there's all sorts of delamination, all sorts of things can happen. So if you're going to repaint a sculpture or provide a new surface coating, you need to be respectful of water conditions, air quality, etc. In California, our VOC limitations are incredibly strict. So if you're looking at repainting or coating a sculpture outdoors, you need to think about tenting, you need to think about scaffolding, any water that's being washed off that might be contaminated needs to be pooled and reserved. It becomes incredibly expensive. It's not so much the material and the labor, but the protections that you need to put in place.
And to circle back on this culture for a second, if it is so offensive to a lot of the community, is it ever considered to sort of...
Right, and part of it is that we are respecting that a community actually raised the funds to gift it to the city, but it is something that we have considered. We thought, there may be a more appropriate location for it if there is, possibly a cultural, Italian-American cultural center. I mean, we've talked about doing that. We've never actually done it, but these are negotiations that we have considered.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah.
And to keep on with graffitis and vandalism for a second, I think this image is quite interesting. My first reaction was to wonder which one was the artwork or both. But
you're right. You're totally right. It's you see it's called Playing Children from Martin Frey, and it is a building of the 1950s, and the artwork was installed in the beginning 60s, and it's iron and was painted yellow. And during the last years, we had a lot of spraying, and you see that it was cleaned several times by the city street department, because the bricks, which are quite brighter, there you can see. I know. Can you show it up there?
Oh, sorry. This.
Yeah, this is the line where you can see down that it was cleaned by the city street department. And which is quite interesting here, that the sprayers, they respected the artwork, because we didn't find, beside some tiny drops, we didn't find any colors from the sprayers on the artwork, but we found destroyed the artwork by the sandplaster of the city department, here, which you can see here, which is quite interesting, because we thought, the sprayers just wanted to take all over the wall, but it didn't was like that. They really put their signs beside the artwork, around the artwork, and didn't really touch the artwork. Yeah, and now the problem is the wrong cleaning of the artwork with the sandplaster. Yeah.
I know. I think there are issues of sort of good intentions with people in a community who feel that an artwork in their neighborhood somehow doesn't look as nice as it should. We have a sculpture from 1909 of Chief South, after whom the city Seattle is named, and it's bronze and it's patinaed, and over the years, so it has this sort of dark patina on it. And someone felt that it really should be much brighter. It was a cab driver who basically took like Comet or some kind of abrasive and just completely tried to clean Chief South. And so then we had to go back and then do some much more extensive care on that sculpture. Yeah. But it was, done from a place of good intentions.
Mm-hmm. You can love an artwork to death. It is possible. Yeah. This is the La Brea Gateway by Catherine Hardwick, who you may be familiar with through her work as a movie director. This is her only public art project, and hopefully we didn't burn her experience there. But this is a really popular piece. It's at, again, Hollywood and La Brea, so we have a lot of TV shows filmed here. Tourists are there getting their photographs taken every day, and people are always touching it to lean on it to have their photographs taken. So some of the original surface coating has delaminated. It was actually fiberglass forms with a metal infrastructure with a stainless steel spray over the top. And so that is something that you can't really do in a public place, like spray stainless steel everywhere. So we had paid for a conservator to provide a recommendation for an alternative treatment plan, and that was to fill the areas in with an epoxy and then to do a paint finish with a chrome, just a very simple chrome paint over the top. And it looked fantastic. However, someone came across and wrote something on one of the back sides of one of the figures
Ladies.
here, as people want to do, I guess. And then some do-gooder came across with a really heavy-duty solvent to remove the terrible graffiti and took away the surface coating that we had provided, some of the stainless steel coating, and worked their way down to the fiberglass and the epoxy treatment, and did way more damage than what the graffiti did. And so, sort of begs the question, what could we do about it? And sort of think, well, do we have a big sign? Don't touch the artwork. If you see it in a graffiti, call Susan Gray. But you don't want to, you don't want to detract from the experience of seeing this artwork in the public domain and just happening upon it. You don't want signage spoiling things. So it's a gentle balance of, having your community stakeholders, like in this case, the Business Improvement District, better educated to call us sooner rather than just waiting for us to do something, because we would have acted quickly. And then we found out who the culprit was, and they are now better educated about what the appropriate protocol is. But nonetheless, it was someone trying to help and ended up doing more harm.
But so the morality is also artworks can be victim of their own popularity, right? When too much love is not always. And talking of that, I was very excited by these images until I realized, because I think skateboarding is a really interesting issue of use and etc. Until Rory told me this is actually a skateboard park.
Right. It was actually, there are skatable elements in this, and we engaged an artist to do the sort of the fence around the outside, and then there is a skatable element. And if you basically, if an artist creates something that has large, sort of expansive vertical surface, then it's going to be sort of attractive to graffiti or folks who perpetrate graffiti tags. And then if it's a sort of large horizontal surface, then it's going to be very attractive to skateboarders. This is a situation where it was a skate park. The artist actually took the images of used skateboard decks and blew them up, and that became the sort of basis for the image of on the glass for the fence. And then the next image actually shows the skatable element. And again, so it was created in such a way that encouraged people to skate on the art. But typically, we do, again, when we look at proposals and talk to the artist in developing an artwork, we do try to ask the artist to consider things that might make it, to discourage skateboarding. Because once those kinds of things that particularly damage to stone, edges and corners are just really, really difficult to repair once they've been damaged.
Right. But do some artists feel like they would like their sculpture to be skateboarded on? Is that something you've encountered in your respective cities?
Accepted. Yeah, some of them accept it, but if they like it or don't like it, it depends. It's a kind of development. The first time you ask them, they no, and then they see it, and it's a kind of that the artwork is accepted by the public and it's used. It got a new function, and some of the artists say, okay, yes, that's fine with me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I did have one artwork that I was involved in that ended up on the cover of Thrasher magazine. If that doesn't speak to you to do something quickly, it was the best place to skate in the world. But we managed to work with a service provider that actually designed skate parks to design some anti-skateboarding devices to attach to the artwork, which mitigated the problem. But, skateboarding, it is so damaging because they're just like whacking against the sculpture and knocking huge chunks off, and the skateboard wax is just impossible to remove. And it's also, from a liability standpoint, incredibly dangerous. You don't want an artwork causing an accident,
But I understand it's also crucial the way you think about deterring skateboarding, because if you do it too aggressively, you might get hostile reactions. So how do you go about it?
I think if you can, with this project, the environment was designed for skaters, so they were part of the community participation for the project, which was, part of the success. With the project that I worked on, it just so happened that we had designed a 3-mile-long skate park without any idea. And, I was involved in the last stage of the project and was sort of doing damage control on phase 1 and trying to redesign phases 2 and 3 at the same time. But I've learned anything 18 inches high, you just don't do it because it's just a perfect height for them just to scoot across.
Yeah, and to have to involve the skating people really to see how you can work on it. We have in front of the cathedral in Cologne. There's the people are skating over artworks, over the sideboard, everywhere, and for sometime the police tried to get them away from the place, and it didn't work. They come back every time. So now they start to communicate with them to build a skate park somewhere, to find a place, and then to build it, to find some funding. And now it works. Yeah. So they left the artwork. Rest in peace. And they have their skate park where they can do their challenges.
So it does boil down very much to also planning and artist intent and thinking of what can happen to the artwork, right?
That's right. And, I think that what we have to do is understand that with public artworks that, places change, the place that an artwork has been, that has been developed for might have to be altered. And so there are things that you have to sort of put in place that allow, as things change, as the uses change, as programming changes, that the artwork can somehow adapt, or that you can work with the artists in the future to figure out what else, what you could do with the artwork. And part of the issues is that there are federal rights that the artists have to the integrity of their artwork. And technically you cannot destroy an artwork. And so then we have to work in sort of very proactive ways to say, and we do this contractually when we're commissioning an artist, we'll say, in the future we anticipate that the city may have to reprogram a space, we may have to move an artwork that may result in the modification or destruction of your artwork. And so we go through steps, we outline steps that what we'll do is we'll make a good faith effort to contact the artist, we'll try to work with the artist to find a solution, whether it's relocating the artwork or working with that artist to sort of modify the artwork so it would be appropriate to the new use of the space.
And during the planning phase, it's important, of course, to work closely with the artists and ask a lot of questions, really get them to think ahead and around the corner, to involve conservators in that initial sort of schematic design phase, and then the owner of the facility or, whatever department who will be the stewards of the project at the end of the day, but also to really consult with the operations people who will be running that space. Let's say it's a hospital, you're doing artwork in the corridors, but you've got gurneys running down the corridor that are going to be smacking up against the artwork, because that means you need to elevate the piece to keep it out of harm's way, and just really thinking about those practical, day-to-day, programmatic, operational decisions that will help, again, protect the artwork.
Yeah, and also the public. It's. I mean, like you said in the beginning, public art is seen by everybody. Right. It's not like in a museum where you have a certain visitors coming and really they come to see the artwork. Here the artwork is in the middle of somewhere in a park or in a downtown city, and a lot of people see it, a lot of people jump in it. So you really have to get to talk to the public what kind of artwork it is, because if you don't really talk to the public, they won't understand the artwork and they won't accept it, and then you have a lot of problems with vandalism.
Mm-hmm. I was going to ask you, I know that you and your students are involved in inventorying and maintaining public art. Are you also involved in advising artists about choice of material or doing public outreach, these kind of things?
Not at the moment, because the city of Cologne doesn't have any money to afford new artworks, which is really a shame. It's just that artworks come by gift to the city of Cologne, and then it's this discussion about if it really fits into the city and where to put it. And there's an art council consulting the city of Cologne about what we can do about it. But then the problem is, if the artwork comes, you only get money for buying art, but you never get money for maintaining art. So what we try is then, this is quite a frustrating example, I must say, from Fletcher Benton. It was installed in 1993. And at this time, traffic at this place was not as busy as today. And on the left side, on the left photo, on the left side, there were no bakery and no McDonald's. After McDonald's and the bakery came, people went into McDonald's, and in summertime they went out and sit around the artwork, which is quite okay. But then they came to the idea, it's nice to have something where I can put on my stickers. And if you see on the left photo, they really climb up the sculpture to put the stickers everywhere on the sculpture. So what happened is the artwork is not really recognized as an artwork. It's quite nice to sit down and to put some notes somewhere and to put some information and all the stickers. And the material is degrading because we have to clean it twice a year. The city of Cologne is coming, and now we get them really that they only use water and not the sandplaster, like you see with the playing children before. So we are discussing here about relocating this artwork. But still then we are missing documentation, though. That's what happened when we start with the inventory, that it's like doing oral history to find out all the different things about the artworks. This was funded by a group of people who want to have more modern art in Cologne, which is very nice, but it's quite an important group, and they have a lot of money, but they only give the money for buying art and not maintaining art. So this is the discussion now we have, finding money for maintaining art and not only putting more and more and more in the city. We have more than 1,000 artworks in the city, and you have to take care about them.
The reason we keep talking about money is there a collection box outside, of course. So hearing you all talk, I understand that sometimes the solution is not necessarily to do a treatment, but you have to think sometimes more creatively. You were thinking, you mentioned relocation, and I was wondering if, Suzanne, you can say a word about this. I understand is a bit of a sad story, but...
Well, this one, again, in its heyday, and was when we first started working in Hollywood, and this is on Ivar. It was outside the library, and the idea was to do this piece called Applause. It involved a decorative fence, and then Ivar Intermission, which is the piece across the middle. And it was beautiful, and if it had been in Disneyland with little elves coming along every night to polish and take care of the piece, that would be fantastic. But this was in the middle of the road in what became a very, very busy thoroughfare. The farmers market is here. There's a lot of construction going on over the course of the last 20 years or so. And go figure, it's in the middle of the road. You've got trucks driving over it, and it has started to fall apart. The city no longer uses this type of methodology in crosswalks. These were pavers that were interlocked and set over a bed of sand. And again, if it had been just for a pedestrian environment, it would have been fine, but with the heavy vehicles driving over the top of it, it caused the artwork to be displaced. And we didn't really have any means to repair it, because that methodology, again, is no longer part of the city's inventory. And they use a process now called Duratherm, where they have like a stencil or decal that's applied by heat over crosswalks, and it's something that they can repair really easily and quickly. So that was the other option, was just to pull out the entire artwork and redo it in Duratherm. So that has been a discussion with the artist, and now the redevelopment agency is closing, and so our ability to do this is no longer available to us. But I guess what the point of, the reason I included this image was that, we've had elements of the artwork that had to be removed because of construction, and then because of the failure of the location, not necessarily of the artwork per se. And placement is just something we really need to think about in terms of our planning. It's not just about materials and construction methodologies, but where is this artwork going to live, and how will it, react to its environment?
Can I ask you to talk about a more maybe successful relocation story?
This is the Staples Center, managed by AEG, and there were a number of artworks, a series of artworks commissioned for the campus, including Untitled 4 by Mark Lear. And there was a selection panel assembled by AEG, and they, made some, wonderful choices. However, when Staples Center opened for the general public, and management came in, and it's really a sports entertainment facility, the artworks didn't seem to hold the same value to management as to what they did when they were initially commissioned. And they really wanted to have heroic sporting figures gracing the plaza, which is probably what they should have gravitated towards in the beginning. So one of the pieces disappeared and Wayne Gretzky appeared, and the artist wasn't happy. We certainly weren't happy. And AG were remarkably cooperative and actually spent probably more on the relocation of these pieces to a more suitable setting in a park-like environment in USC, with the help of a great conservator and engineer and art consultant, and definitely the cooperation of the artist. Much more graceful setting. They're in pretty good repair, and AG can continue with these types of pieces, which they are what they are, and they're suitable for that location, and everybody's happy.
There you go. Happy ending. Rory, do you also deal with this type of solutions, or is it more straightforward conservation
we really
treatments?
do try. Most of, since our artworks are actually commissioned for other departments in the city, that we try not to we try to deflect any pressure to relocate things. I mean, we are constantly actually, again, in our basketball or former basketball arena, well, I guess the women's team is still there, but we had an artwork that was designed for it, and there's always been pressure particularly from the owners of the team, we have an artwork in a very prominent location, basically right opposite the entry, and everyone sort of sees it as prime advertising space. And so they'd really like to see the artwork removed or relocated someplace else. And it's actually one of these artworks that is caught kind of contractually in this weird time, and it is protected by the Visual Artists' Rights Act that protects the artist's rights to the artwork. It's part of the copyright law. And we have sort of been asked periodically, could we consider relocating the artwork? And the artist, when we approached the artist about it, he's like, well, no, I made my reputation on that particular artwork and I don't want to see it moved. And one of the things that we cannot do is to destroy an artwork under the Visual Artists' Rights Act. But what we can do is, and we've considered doing this, although we haven't really approached the artist about this just yet, is that we could remove it and store it and look for another location at a future point, as long as we don't destroy any elements of it. We could remove it. The other thing that the artist could do, we could, under his rights, he could actually pay to remove it and take it back. It's a very large artwork. It's 60 feet long with metal panels and then 28 TV monitors. And the issue with that piece is it's a media piece, but it was done in the 90s. So these are monitors that you can never replace because they don't, everything's gone to flat screen. The proportions of monitors have changed. So it has a whole host of issues. And occasionally, we have some artworks that have had to be sort of relocated, and what they end up doing is sitting in storage for a long time until we can find a suitable location. And there just really isn't a lot of space in Seattle to put some significant artworks. There aren't a lot of places to move something to.
I think this is a very important point, that when you have a public art collection, that you really have to think about that artwork. It's like in a museum. You have a collection change, and you show new objects, and the other objects are going to the storage. And I think we have to manage the artwork in the public space at the same level. You can't you cannot put an artwork there and leave it there for 100 or 150 years. You really have to look after it every year and perhaps think about to change location or to put it in the storage after 10 years or after 20 years, and to put something new, leave it out, leave the place like this, because it's the surrounding is changing, and it's a question if the artwork still fits in the area.
Right.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah,
and it is hard because we sort of use art in a way, public art particularly, to sort of create a sense of community, a sense of place. A lot of times artworks are created very specifically for a location, and an artist may have done, interviews with people in the community. They've done research into the history or the geography or some environmental conditions, and so the artwork, a lot of times, we sort of see it in sort of an urban design sense, that really it is about creating place, creating community. And so then, moving an artwork someplace else, then it sort of loses its relevance and it loses its meaning. So again, we try not to. And to some extent, as these artworks become older, they become sort of a part of the cultural heritage of the city. And so we try to retain things as much as we can. Partly it's just the natural hoarder in me that I want to keep things. But I think that, there are times that sometimes, and with the media artworks, we do sort of understand that there may be a limited lifespan to those artworks, even if they are site-specific.
The relocation is definitely sort of like the last thing that you want to entertain. You want to exhaust all your other options first.
I think on these interesting thoughts about lifespan and changing life of artworks, maybe we'll open the floor to the public if anyone has questions. Oh.
Hi there. I'm interested in the wealth of murals that Los Angeles has, many of which are, say, 30, 40, 50 years old now. And there's not a lot of research. Some of them we don't know who painted them. Sometimes it was a community that painted them without a real artist. And there wasn't really a commission involved in the beginning. Can you folks address that, and maybe how those can be preserved or conserved without that much money or bureaucracy being involved?
Well, there are a few things to sort of discuss. One is that the Department of Cultural Affairs has completed a fairly comprehensive list of murals throughout the city, and where they have been able to identify the artist, that's been logged into a database. There are organizations like Spark that are helping with fundraising for restoration, and they need as much help. So again, if you see that box at the door, throw money into it. No, but seriously, in terms of planning and the way that we approach commissions to avoid that type of situation, we have not really, in the last 7 years or so with the CRA, commissioned painted murals. We gravitate towards treatments where you're using, the artist is still doing the same type of process, painting or drawing in the studio, but the image is scanned into a high-resolution format, translated into some type of very durable material like porcelain enamel, powder-coated aluminum, ceramic tile, where you know that it will hold up well. It's not going to fade. Graffiti can be wiped off. It's something that we're very fortunate to have in this day and age. It were, things that weren't available to us, 15 years ago. So we try to take advantage of those.
In fact, did you mention that this particular mural was going to be...
Right, this project, we didn't commission the artwork, but we provided some technical assistance on the treatment, and this is Hollywood Jazz over at Capitol Records. And so, sadly, some pigments have not held up in our beautiful Californian sun. There are some structural problems with the concrete wall in which the mural is applied, so you've got some delamination. So Capitol Records have generously contracted with the artist to have the entire artwork recreated in ceramic tile. So it's a tremendous legacy.
Here, there was a question here. Third row here. Oh, sorry. Sorry.
Not from the, if I can
yes.
answer. There's a technique for removal murals. It's looking for the English expression. It's a kind of saw. You have a wire. Mm-hmm. It's just a wire. You put behind the wall, and then you saw the mural from the wall, and then you start a new mural. This is one thing we did in Germany once, but I don't know if you do it here. Or the other thing is that you have put on an intermediate surface, and on this you put a new plaster, and then you put on the new mural. So the older mural is saved under intermediate surface. Yeah.
Here, lady here.
I have a question about the fountain in Cologne. If you have an artist that creates a water feature and you take away the water, you're left with a feature. And I'm wondering, in the extreme, when we talked about artist integrity, have you considered dismantling it? Because is it, I don't want to say insulting to the artist, but it's not the original purpose, and it has become not really an eyesore, but it's not the specific purpose for which it was designed. Can you comment on that a little bit?
Yeah, you're totally right. And it's really a sad story. The artist does not live anymore, so we couldn't ask him. And we don't have something like the Visual Artist Right Act. This is in Germany. So there's nobody who really can take up and say, we need the water. This is the artwork is really destroyed if you don't have the water on it. So it's more really on talking to the politician, looking for funding, that the artwork is really working and functioning. And on the other hand, de-installing the artwork is then the people ask, what are we going with the place? So they need some money to clean up the place. So they leave it like this. It doesn't cost any money. They just put the cleaning team in there and wait. It's really like this, waiting until the artwork is totally destroyed.
Because de-installation can be more expensive than the initial commission sometimes, because the removal for a large, heavy object, the disposal of the object or replacement or relocation, then you need to mitigate. You've left with a hole in the ground that needs to be landscaped or redesigned. And so, elected officials may say, well, just commission a new artwork and just leave this one doing what it's doing. It doesn't really solve any problem.
Time is solving the problem.
I put up this picture of also a water feature artwork we were in Seattle. I'm not sure, here there is water, but in this image there isn't.
Right, that's right. And so this is an artwork that in the wintertime, this is Waterworks by Douglas Hollis, who is based out of San Francisco. And it is an artwork that we actually hope that has water on it most of the time in order to prevent, people climbing up it, but also these acts of vandalism. Although this is a somewhat more artistic sort of vandalism. But, I think that, it costs to run the water. And so particularly in our rainy season, which is 10 months out of the year, there are times when the water really isn't running. But in this case, I think they had shut the piece off for maintenance, and then that's when the graffiti appeared.
Hi. I wonder whether you could comment a little bit further on choice of location, whether you are focusing on outreach to communities that perhaps don't have ready access to museums and galleries, or whether it is really very much based on artistic intent, cost of real estate, and so on and so forth. I wonder if you could just expand on that.
Well, a lot of our artworks are actually created for specific projects within a neighborhood. And so we usually don't, purchase or commission an artwork without a location. So there will always be sort of a site for which the artist is designing. And in those cases, we do engage the community. We always, we ask for a community representative, usually someone who has been active within the community, to serve on the selection panel. And then that person may actually serve as a resource as the artist is developing an artwork. So a lot of times an artist is creating something that's really specific to that neighborhood. And so we do, and as the project goes forward, we attend community meetings. The artist attends community meetings. We always ask the communities. We don't usually ask the community specifically, what do you want to see? Like they might say a sculpture. We don't ask that question. We always say, what are the characteristics that you would like to see in the artwork? And so they might say, we'd like to see something that engages all age groups, something that's kinetic, and that sort of thing. And so it provides some guidance for the artist, but then it also allows the artist to, to exercise their own sort of artistic freedom in developing something for that community.
And our programs have generally been, location will drive the artwork placement in terms of it's a retail development. It has to be in a public area. The only public area is the courtyard, so therefore the artwork will be placed here. And we have, in terms of community engagement, there's what the private developer will do with their artist selection process and involving their stakeholders in terms of operations and users of the space. In terms of identifying the artwork itself and the artist selection, etc., then we would have a community advisory panel, which may include people that live or work in the project area, hopefully with some type of artistic acumen in terms of being a curator involved in a museum, or just liking artwork and wanting to be involved in the process. They don't need to have a degree or anything like that. And then to take it a step further, all our art plans need to be were approved by our Board of Commissioners. So, and there's a chance for public comment during those meetings too.
I wonder in your discussion.
Sorry.
In your discussion about conserving the artwork, you talked about vandalism, but are you concerned about theft? Because I noticed in the days where there's GPS and you know exactly where the works are, Venice, they did such a good job, they went back after they surveyed them, and some 30 were no longer around. I don't know if they were all taken away, but the smaller ones could be.
I'm not sure. Can you... Sorry, wait. Can you maybe reformulate the question? I'm not sure if it was entirely clear.
What about theft? Now that you identify the exact locations of the artworks with GPS and photos.
Right.
In Venice, they did a cataloging, and they went back to find the artworks, and 30 were gone. So.
Oh, so there is the question about theft? Yeah. Or Eddie?
We've had some attempted thievery. There was some, a large bronze sculpture that someone just wanted for scrap, and then once they sort of tried to dismantle it, they realized it was incredibly heavy and that they couldn't move it and just left it lying in the street. So we had the artwork in consultation with the artist, re-engineered, reinstalled, and then the same thing happened again. Not immediately, but, the Great Recession happened and people got desperate, and again the artwork was left in the street because it was just too heavy to move. So we succeeded in one degree. It was too heavy to move. But, these things are expensive to repair because they'd lassoed the artwork, it was dragged off its pedestal, it hit the ground, it's fractured, you've got all sorts of scuffing that needs to be, repatinated. It's going to be incredibly expensive to repair.
And we have had issues with theft. If you could go back, actually, there are bronze elements. Those are actually diverters that allow people to interact with the artwork and move sort of the water flow. But those have been stolen. I mean, basically, if it's metal, if it's, we have plaques that have been stolen. We have some small-scale bronze sculptures. Oh, that one may have actually been taken because someone wanted to put it in their garden because it was a cute little seahorse. But I think now there was one artwork that was an electrical artwork that's in a park, and someone actually removed all the copper wire. So there are components of them. We've never had a very large-scale sculpture stolen, although there was a totem pole that was taken that didn't belong to the city. It was, I think, a community-funded one. But it was done in broad daylight, and someone came with a truck, and everyone thought, oh, they must be doing something like repairing it, and they just, it went off to Oregon somewhere. They did track it down, but it was because, and several people even in our office said, oh yeah, I saw this truck by the side of the road taking the totem pole, and we just thought it was, for conservation reasons.
Yeah, but it's a big problem, especially with the bronze sculptures and copper sculptures, because when after the metal price went up, a lot of sculptures were stolen, and I must say we weren't so lucky in Germany like you were, because they really came with a big truck and a crane and put during the night, just cut it from the bottom and brought it away. And it was never found again. Yeah.
Amazing.
Hello. I was encouraged to hear about CRA's approach with the issues of maintenance and covenants and transferable covenants of the developers and such. So I kind of have a two-parter. Is that some kind of ongoing process that is becoming well established? And also, would you recommend artists build those types of legal aspects of their commissions into their works? In other words, when a piece is commissioned, an artist actually get involved in the legalese of those covenants being established and being transferable, especially with reference to maintenance issues.
Very big question. Try and break it down. So the Community Redevelopment Agency has required covenants in the last 10 years or so for artworks being commissioned, and those covenants will then follow on from one property owner to another. I believe the Department of Cultural Affairs has a parallel process with their commissions with private development. In terms of contracts, a lot of municipalities or governing agencies have boilerplate language that is not negotiable, and so adding something on an artist by artist basis isn't always possible. We have our standard contract, and unless it's a highly specialized piece, we wouldn't, change the contract language. But we do have a lot of protections for the artist as well as protections for us as the commissioning agency. And we want the artwork to age in a respectful environment. We want the artist to be happy with the commissioning process and the outcome for the longest possible time. So, with respect to the Visual Artists' Rights Act, to the California Art Preservation Act, building in warranty language, and also, in your milestone deliverables, making sure during your planning process there's adequate room for exchange of ideas to make sure that you're developing the artwork with the best intentions of stewardship.
I'm sort of imagining your email inboxes on a Monday morning sort of full of these images where you're getting these horrific images of vandalism or theft or graffiti or stickers or whatever it is. But have there been any instances where there have been certain public works where you've been pleasantly surprised, either pieces somehow almost inexplicably being left alone to just function, or whether some sort of interaction with the public has actually almost sort of added something more positive to it?
I guess, for me, just as an example, going to Hollywood and Highland at 10 o'clock in the morning and to see someone scrubbing Erica Rothenberg's bench down and using a mild detergent and just really taking it seriously, And then at the end of the day, I could be there at 4 o'clock and it's covered in gum and drinks and it's sticky and horrible. But people have been using it. They've been relaxing, having their photograph taken with the Hollywood sign behind. They've had a wonderful experience with, the help of an artist. And to know that that piece is going to hold up until 10 o'clock tomorrow morning and someone's going to be back there again with their soft sponge and mild detergent, making it look fantastic again, that makes me very happy.
It's a beautiful thought. Is it something you can relate to?
No, we have some situations where, a lot of times artists think when we're asking them questions about maintenance, have you considered this? And they have this sort of attitude, oh, well, it's artwork, no one will touch it. And that's really, it's somewhat naive. But we have had situations where we have been pleasantly surprised. We have an artwork that has a lot of sort of surfaces that one could put graffiti on, and for whatever reason, it could be that it's in a location where a lot of people do come by. Once you isolate something, then you make it more vulnerable to vandalism. But something that's in a public location or where people really have, see it as sort of a landmark within their community, and that they're sort of watching out for it. I think that we have a few instances of that as well.
As a conclusion, can I ask the three of you if you could sum up in one word the future of conservation of public art? What would that be?
A challenge.
Okay.
I think anticipation, just always thinking ahead and around the corner.
Mm-hmm. That's right. It's all about, I guess, it's future planning. It's
foresight.
Right.
All right, well, thank you all very much for your attention. Wine and refreshments await outside, and please join me in thanking the panel.